Hello and welcome back. Thanks so much for joining me again. I just thought I'd talk you through a walk that I took along a track on the New Forest a couple of weeks ago. We've had a very long dry summer in the UK, and so the colours got really interesting because the fern, as you can see here, had started to die off and go orange. Then it rained and the trees went green again. A really interesting light morning as well. So this was my final image. I'm not sure whether I love it or hate it. I really love the way it's captured the light though. The light was coming through this tree here, right on the edge of the enclosure, and just bouncing off these tree trunks here. So this is a double exposure in camera, as you can see from sort of cross-hatching effect on the leaves. So let's just turn this off. So here is the scene, not a great photograph because I'm on a long exposure. I just snapped it so you get a bit of an idea of what the world looks like down there. Now at this moment, the sun had gone in, so there wasn't so much light. As you can see, the light up here, that's where the light was coming in down onto these trees here. So I'd gone down there, and as I say, for me, it's a conversation with the world, between me and the camera and the world. And I loved the colour. I loved how it was very lemony. So it was kind of lemon coloured fern that was then dying off to the orange. So I loved the colour. It was the colour that grabbed me. So I started trying to experiment to bring up the colour. So this was on bright blend mode. So I've got Fuji X-T4, there's 4 blend modes, and this was on bright because my goal was to try and capture this colour. And it kind of worked from that purpose, but I don't like it. It's not an effect I particularly like. But if you move very slowly when you do your horizontal exposure, you can see how it's kept some of the shape of the fern. So I kind of thought, that's interesting. I wonder what else I can do with that. So just so if you're wondering, we're in my Photoshop. The only thing I've done to these images is put a levels adjustment on them. So that's why they're in groups, but there's been no other editing done. So I turned around and looked back down the track I'd walked down. So I've come down this track, but for a moment I turned around and started playing around with this colour that caught my attention in a circle on this tree here. So again, on bright blend mode, I've got just 2 exposures, one horizontal, one vertical. So when I say a conversation with the world, the other thing that I noticed that morning was there was almost no breeze. So the only movement that you see here is me, because you could play around with synchronizing with nature, and I'll talk about that another day. But on this particular day, there was no movement. There was nothing. It was almost completely still. So that was my first attempt. Then I was trying to soften the movement. I was just trying to make less movement. Let's just zoom in a bit and have a look. So with this one, let's have a look at the first one again. With the first one, I have made a clear horizontal movement, and I use my body to make these movements. I don't necessarily just move the camera because you tend to find the movements not so controlled. And then my vertical movement was straight up. You can see the lines, the cross-hatching. On this next attempt, this is me pushing the camera in towards the scene. So pushing the camera into the frame, into the picture. And that gives you that much softer effect you can see just captured here on the edges. And I like this. This is something I love playing around with. Next one was getting much harder again. So this is much more like the first one where I'm playing with that cross-hatching effect. Don't really like it. Definitely the middle one is my favourite, and then the last one was just an upward movement. Then we have where I've now stepped forward. So I'm now, just so you know, I've stepped back up to about here and I'm looking straight into these trees. So that's kind of what it looks like. We looked at this one at the start. I then had a go at just a single camera movement up, and I kind of like this. If I zoom in, I do love what it does to the tree trunks. So this isn't a pan upwards. This is me standing with one foot slightly in front of the other and pushing the camera into the scene and slightly up at the same time. And it just loses some of the definition of the tree trunks, but without that streaking effect. And you can see the movement of my body in the fern. Again, it started playing around with multiple exposure again, doesn't work, horrible mess. Zoom out and have a look at this one. So this was me then trying to soften my movement, and I was starting to realise by now that my mistake was trying to photograph the fern, because in trying to do that and trying to keep some shape and colour there, I was really messing up the trees. So I think then, yeah, so then I started thinking, rather than focusing on the fern, I'm going to try and focus on the trees and just kind of hope that it all comes together with the fern. And that started working a bit better for me, because I was then managing to keep some sort of order with how the trees looked. And the fern was just kind of working out. So it's a conversation with yourself, just going out there and always looking at the back of the camera and thinking, why is this not working? What else might I be able to do? And looking at what you're trying to say, I mean, again, I wanted to say something about the colour, but I didn't necessarily have to focus on that as a subject to get this to kind of work. Again, this one, you can see here, I've pushed into the frame, so I've not panned, I've just pushed in, and I've not done enough. It's too subtle. So you can see the movement on over here on this side of the frame, that there is a movement, and it's going to always end up with you pushing upwards because of your natural body movement, but it's not enough. So the trees have retained too much of their detail. And then I think the top one was the final one. So this was my last effort, and this is the one that I then showed you before as the final edits. This is the original, just with, I think it's just got a levels adjustment. So let's just turn that off. So that's exactly what it looked like out of the camera. That's with a levels adjustment. And then the one you saw before was my final edit where I tinkered around with it. Yeah, there you go. So I kind of made much of the things that mattered, the conversation that nature was having with me, showing me this light that I just loved coming down through these trees. We're right on the edge of an enclosure here. So there's the track you saw, and then behind me was another track. So right on the edge of the enclosure, the light is just coming straight in through here, catching this tree. And I just thought it was quite amusing the way the double exposure has almost created a seam up the middle of this tree. So there you go. I hope that helps you a little bit with your own creativity. That was all on bright blend mode in the camera with just levels adjustments to show you what I've done. And I would just say, try and think of it as a conversation between you and the world when you go out. So I hope that helps you, and I will see you next time. Thanks so much for listening.